sant yàlla.
looy xaar utal wéef nga scan nga fay te nag doo ci yokku dara.
Jah Oil Company stands tall as a trusted name in energy, keeping the Gambia moving with service stations across the country and a commitment to innovation and reliability. In Farafenni, Jah Group is reshaping our industrial landscape. The Jah Oil Cement Factory can produce up to 100,000 bags a day, reducing imports, creating jobs, and building a stronger Gambia brick by brick. And in the heart of the Central River region, Jah Farming Initiative is cultivating food security. With thousands of hectares under development and modern irrigation, Jah Farming is turning the Gambia's soil into abundance. Jah Group is more than a company. It is a vision of self-sufficiency, resilience, and progress. The Jah Group of companies, investing in industry, agriculture, and energy, building the Gambia's future today.
In the Gambia, we all move to different paces. Time is money, convenience is power, and now both are in your hands. No more long lines, no more late payments, no more missed chances. Not anymore. Because now the Gambia has its own super app, Zap. One app, one tap, endless convenience. Send money instantly, pay your bills in seconds, shop without borders, pay your rides, order your meal, buy your ticket, deposit and withdraw money for absolutely free. No extra charges, no hidden fees, only on Zap Super App. This is not just convenience. This is confidence. This is the future in your hands. And the best part, Zap is born right here. Built for us, designed for every Gambian home, every Gambian dream. So don't wait in the past. Step into the future. Download Zap today on App Store and Play Store and enjoy endless free services. Call us today on our toll-free number 1666 or on 260-0001. Zap. All in one. All for you. Tap in. Zap in.
If the world hasn't stopped moving, your money shouldn't slow you down. With Bloombank Africa, you are always connected, wherever, whenever, in many ways than one. So whether you're sending funds to family, paying for goods and services, settling bills, or just making sure you've got some cash at hand, Bloombank puts speed, simplicity, and security in the palm of your hand. Transfer funds between your Wave or AfriMoney account and your Bloombank account anytime, anywhere, because your money should flow at the pace of your life. Visit your nearest Bloombank branch today to link your account. Bloombank Africa. We make it happen.
Dr. Usman Gajigo, one of the Gambia's most respected economists. Over the years, he has become a prominent public voice on governance, agriculture, public finance, and economic reform. Known for his data-driven analysis and his willingness to challenge entrenched systems. Dr. Gajigo is now also an active political actor, having founded the Patriotic Progressive Alliance and later joining forces with the Gambia for All in a bid to reshape the national political landscape. With the central bank's recent 200 basis point rate cut, the National Assembly's scrutiny of the 2025 budget, and his party's new digital platform now live, there is much to discuss about the direction of the country's economy and its politics. Economist and politician Dr. Usman Gajigo joins us now on Coffee Time. Dr. Gajigo, good morning and thanks for coming.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I can't guarantee it's going to be as exciting as with Uncle Peter, but definitely we'll try to do our best here as well. So let's get through with it. I'd like us to start with your party, the Patriotic Progressive Alliance. What was the central motivation for merging your movement with Gambia for All at this particular moment in the country's political trajectory?
Yeah, no, for us, that was a no-brainer. As you and everyone can see right now, we have a huge number of political parties and movements. And it's clear that a fragmentation of the opposition doesn't really help the task of unseating an incumbent. Even under the best of circumstances, it's difficult to remove an incumbent, especially if you are very fragmented. So there's bound to be some consolidation at some point. I'm not saying it's impossible to remove the incumbent if there's no coalition, but it's just going to be a lot harder. So the coalition building process is ongoing and will go on further, but we can help that along the way, because given the large number of political parties, it's just it doesn't make sense to say that there are no political parties that don't share the same values, the same principles, and the same objectives. So it makes sense that if you see another political party that shares similar values, principles, and goals, then I think it's a natural thing to want to consolidate. What this will do is make it even a lot, make the coalition building process a lot easier. Yeah. So for us, GFA, when we observe the leadership of GFA, their principles, their values, the character and integrity of the people who are leading the party, because that is very important. Character and integrity. A lot of things can be faked and policies can be copied, pasted. But when you know the character, the integrity, the competence of the people in an organization, that can tell you a lot about how that organization is going to evolve in the future.
Before the merger, the PPA presented itself as a reform-driven technocratic platform. How does that identity translate within the broader GFA structure?
Yeah, no. So basically, it's a fusion. So when the two entities came together, obviously GFA was already established. Already registered. So now the new entity is still called GFA. But by coming together, there are a lot of things that PPA had done. It was a merger. So our leadership merged with the leadership of GFA. There are certain documents that GFA has that we brought them together. So the manifesto of our GFA is a reflection now of ideas from GFA and PPA, same as certain documents that will come out shortly. Yes.
You've always talked about or spoken about evidence-based leadership. How did that principle guide your decision to join forces with GFA?
Yeah, again, like I said, when you're looking at a potential partner, you have to look at several traits and characteristics, and the integrity, the characters of the leaders matter a bit. Not a bit, but a lot. To be more concrete here, let's give an example. The Secretary General of GFA is Bibi Dabo. This gentleman was, for several decades, worked in the Jawara regime as a minister, various portfolios, but most prominently as a vice president for about 10 years. I like to give a little tidbits about him, just to give an idea of the caliber of the individual you're talking about. When Bibi Dabo, during all that tenure, this man has only one compound to date. Now, think about the situation we have in the Gambia today. Would you believe if somebody tells you there is somebody who's been a minister for 10 years in the current regime and only has one compound? I think many people will find that very hard to believe, because what that tells you is that here is an individual whose tenure in office, Bibi Dabo was known as a technocrat. He was active in PPP, the then PPP, which is different from the current PPP. In the then PPP, he was very active. He was a politician, but also at the same time a technocrat, somebody who held many portfolios before he became VP. So for us, when we were looking at it, at this at a partner, somebody, what Bibi Dabo embodies, is a big part of what attracted us. To answer your question, in performing these things.
How has leadership been organized within the merger entity, and what role do you now play in shaping strategic and policy direction?
Like I said, we have the leadership of PPA merged with the leadership of GFA. So we have several executive members of PPA who are now executive members of GFA. Now, because GFA was already established, was already registered with the constitution, so obviously it is the constitution of GFA that is operative right now. So that constitution stipulates how the Secretary General is elected in a party congress. So currently, the Secretary General and leader of GFA is Bakari Bunja Dabo, Bibi Dabo. Again, the constitution also stipulates how certain things are done. The flag bearer position, again, that's something that is not selected. The constitution stipulates that that's selected at a certain period before the election. So at the moment, that's vacant. When the time comes, the party will make a decision as to who will occupy that one. So currently, all I can tell you, I'm a senior member and an executive of GFA. The leader of GFA, in terms of specifically the Secretary General of the party, is Bibi Dabo.
What would you say distinguishes the PPA GFA platform from other opposition parties in terms of governance and, say, policy direction?
Let me focus more on the governance here. I mean, like I said, there are processes that, just as required by law. There are.
This is in comparison, of course, to other opposition
parties. Yes, yeah. I'm sure every political party would be able to say that they have a certain governance structure that is democratic in nature and consistent with the laws or the decrees that are in operation right now. But let me focus on something specific with regards to policy. Almost every political party has a manifesto, and they will tell you these are the commitments that we have for the country in the next so and so years. But one thing that will come out and you will see is that, and this, basically after this merger with GFA, of PPA and GFA, is that what we have to realize is when you have a government in waiting, or any government that's actually in power, what you have to do is not restricted to just your 5-point agenda or your 10-point agenda. You have to basically address every single sector, every issue, whether there is some things are sectors like agriculture, industrialization, fisheries. Other things are much more like cross-cutting issues like gender, youth. But the point is, if you are a government in waiting, you must be able to convince the people, or you should be able to convince the people that you are ready to address every single issue in the country, across every sector, across every cross-cutting issue. So one thing you will see that will that distinguishes GFA from other parties is that beyond the manifesto, there is a document where the party talks about every issue: agriculture, fisheries, health, education, transportation, urban planning, gender, youth, every sector that that is relevant for the governance of this country, where the party meticulously will articulate the importance of that sector. What is the status quo? What this government is doing wrongly, and what it would do differently. So this is something that is very concrete, and that makes us that when issues come up, right now, for instance, whether we are talking about, let's say agriculture, whether something about, a food security bill comes up, like that's currently in front of the National Assembly. the party would have a position on that is well articulated, because within the party there are structures, there are policies and research analysis unit that actually looks at these things, does the necessary investigation that needs to be done, and formulate what it believes are corrective measures that are needed to make sure that those sectors' goals are actually achieved.
The central bank has just cut the monetary policy rate by 200 basis points.
Yes.
One of the steepest adjustments in recent years. What economic conditions, in your view, justify such an aggressive cut at this moment?
Listen, the cutting of the interest rate, I think I have less of an issue with the cutting of the interest rate than how the whole thing is being packaged, especially by the monetary policy authorities and probably by the broader government. Currently, the interest rates, the monetary policy rate, at 14% is already, is quite high. Going from, in any other economy, going from 16% to 14% is a major cut. But in the in the context of the Gambia, this is already, is still at a high rate, and this has a lot of problems. When you have such high interest rates in the economy, I mean, especially, basically it makes it difficult for businesses to borrow and invest, because interest rate, the monetary policy rate that the central bank is adjusting, is what really guides the other interest rates in the economy. So when that is high, other interest rates are high too. When that is low, other interest rates are low. So like I said, interest rate is the cost of borrowing. When these things are high, then you have, it's very difficult for the private sector to borrow and invest, and it is this investment which generates outputs, creates employment. The issue here that I would like to focus on is not so much the cutting of the interest rate. The problem is not a one-time thing. It's the process that has led up to where we are right now. The point is that it's been high for quite a while. And why has it been high? Because the government has been borrowing excessively. If you look at these financial institutions in the country, whether it's microfinance, whether it's the commercial banks, the percentage of their assets that is composed of government securities like T-bills and bonds is very, very high. When those things are high, it means that those institutions don't bother looking to lend money to companies and individuals. They rather lend money to the government. And when that is happening, you basically have the government crowding out the private sector. So the government's excessive borrowing is what has been driving up the interest rate and forcing banks to lend money to the government as opposed to businesses. This cutting of the interest rate is welcome. What I have problem with is when it was cut and announced, the monetary policy authorities, the central bank, announced that they projected a high growth in the economy.
That leads me to my next question, because inflation has been easing, but many Gambians still feel the cost of living pressure.
Yes.
How quickly, if at all, will this rate cut translate into relief for households and businesses?
Not much. Like I said again, the reason why that will not be the case is that typically in certain economies, if you listen to the financial news, you'd hear that, okay, if the Federal Reserve in the US or the central bank in some advanced countries cut the interest rate, economists or analysts will tell you, project that this is going to boost the economy. The channel through which that works is through multiple channels, but the most common way it works is through businesses taking loans and financing their expansions and creating employment, and consumers making significant purchases like vehicles and housing on credit. The problem is that channel doesn't work in the Gambia. The main reason on the business side is, as I said, the interest rates are already at a level where it's so high that financial institutions don't lend to businesses as much as they should. They instead would prefer lending to the government. On the consumer side, we don't have an economy where consumers make significant purchases on credit, like buying vehicles or taking mortgages or buying other things on credit. Here in the Gambia, everything is almost exclusively on cash basis.
Cash and carry.
So when you lower this interest rate, even by 200 basis points, which in almost any other advanced country, this would be a massive, unprecedented adjustment. In the Gambia, it's not going to move the needle a bit because the main channel through which it works is such that the activities of the government already precludes any movement on the side of business investment, and we don't have a consumer a profile of consumer spending that is responsive to changes in interest rate. So the likelihood that this interest rate cut is going to have a boost to economic growth, let's say this year or next year, is almost, I wouldn't say zero, but it's very minimal.
Now, critics argue that monetary policy alone cannot stabilize prices without fiscal discipline. I mean, how aligned do you think the central bank and the Ministry of Finance are right now?
Very misaligned. I don't know. I mean, of course, I'm not in government. I cannot tell you exactly what happens in the corridors of the government. But all I can tell you is, if the goal of the government is to boost economic growth, the overall government, it is a combination of monetary authorities and fiscal side, is to boost growth, lower the cost of living. What needs to happen is not happening. If you really need to...
What would you say needs to happen?
What needs to happen, like I said in my article, almost all of the actions, the necessary actions are on the fiscal side. Let's talk, I mean, as you mentioned, inflation and cost of living, for instance.
Yes.
In the Gambia, what is, if you notice right now, the reason why goods the cost of goods is always increasing is that Gambia is an import-dependent economy. We import virtually everything, including, most notably, things that we could produce locally. Like, for instance, rice. 90% of the rice is
still being
imported. Vegetable oil, what have you, many things. The point is that as you import most of this product, and in the Gambia, what we import is almost 3 times what we export. The value of our import is approaching $1 billion. The value of our export is barely 300 million. So the trade deficit we have in the Gambia is hundreds of millions of dollars. When you have a large trade deficit, what it does consistently, as we've been having in the Gambia, it always puts a downward pressure on your currency. Your currency always depreciates. So which means that even if you want to import a shirt or a phone, even if the price remains the same in countries you are importing it from, whenever it is being imported into Gambia, its price will increase because the value of the dollar is continuously falling.
Depreciating.
So you can see, so to give you, that's one example. We all know that we have enough arable land in the Gambia. We all know that we have a fishery sector. If we want, we don't have to import anything on the fishery side. We don't have to import anything on the rice side. We don't have to import anything on many fast-moving consumer goods. As long as there are no structural changes in the economy, number one, making sure that we have the reforms that are needed in agriculture, we have the reforms that are needed to let's say, you can name many other sectors. As long as those reforms are not done, and we continue to import increasingly, and our trade deficit continue to expand and balloon, you can cut the interest rate all you want. The country is going to continue to import. The dollar will continue to depreciate, which means the cost of goods will continue to go up, even though their international prices have remained constant. But the price in the Gambia will go up. To give a specific example, over the past 5 years, the international price of rice only went up about 6%. In the Gambia, it's gone up about 10%. There's a huge difference per annum. There's a huge difference between a 6% increase per annum versus a 10% increase per annum. A huge difference. So this is the crux of the matter. This monetary policy right now, adjustment of interest rates, its impact on the standard of living of Gambians, whether through their reduction in prices or growth of income or generation of employment, it's going to be very little. All the actions, the problems and their solutions are all on the fiscal side. So if we want to see a government that is working towards improving standard of living, working towards increasing employment, we need to see reforms on the fiscal side. We need to make sure that the debt the government is taking is managed so that it's not forcing commercial banks to take all their assets into financing government borrowing, force commercial banks into lending to businesses. But right now we are seeing the government taking a lot of loans, and those loans are not always being invested in the priority areas as they should be. So you have excessive expenditures, misallocation of resources, lack of reforms, poor personnel decisions. These are the structural problems we have in the country, and these are all on the fiscal side. So there needs to be a better coordination here. The monetary policy right now, what they did, reduction of interest rate, I don't have much of a problem with that. But it's almost pointless, and if you don't do anything on the fiscal side.
You're saying the rate cuts does not stop the weakening of the dollar?
Absolutely not.
Do you also see this, as necessary, or what necessary stimulus do you see this for a slowing economy, if you'd like? Because, the trajectory, as one would understand it from a layman's understanding, is once these rate cuts happen, automatically or systematically or eventually, we will be realizing improvement of growth, especially the dollar appreciating, contrary to what you've just made us to understand about the depreciation not being any different. If anything, we should be concerned that this would continue to happen.
Yeah, right now, so the rate cut, again, like I said, if the rate cut is going to improve the economy, what we should be saying, for instance, would be to see the commercial banks will say, our returns to holding government securities like T-bills and other things now is not as high as it used to be. Less, and businesses, now that businesses know that interests are going down, they are going to borrow more. Let's shift our assets into financing businesses. But that cannot happen. Why? Because the government on the fiscal side is still continuing to borrow. In fact, the domestic debt from 5 years ago increased by over 30%. So the government is borrowing at a very, very high rate all the time. So as long as the government continues to borrow at a high rate, and the interest rates, even though they are lower, they are still at a level of 14%. Commercial banks would find it a lot easier to give their money to the government than to give it to businesses that will generate employment. Look, on the public sector side, the total number of employees that the public sector can create is what in the Gambia? It's not more than 50,000. About 50,000. What is the population of the Gambia? 2.7 million. What percent? How many people are working age population? Well over 1 million. So, government expanding when private sector cannot expand. Is that going to have any dent? 50,000. Is that going to have any dent in a population of 2.7 million? Absolutely not. So the problem here is, as long as you have all of these inefficiencies in the fiscal side, you have government going through, spending excessively where it is not needed. I can give you many examples. One example is the following. Our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what is the budget allocation to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? It's over 2 billion in recurrent. That's 2 billion. What does the Ministry of Foreign Affairs do for the Gambia right now with 2 billion that you couldn't do with 500 million? Nothing. 1.5 billion is just wasted. We have embassies in many parts of the world where they are not performing any role. We would have 2 embassies close to each other where there are only few Gambians. The rest of the time you go to these embassies, you will find them doing nothing. So right now, because of the budget deficit the government is constantly running, it means that the government has to borrow money just to pay tax, just to pay salaries for people who are not doing anything.
talking about the budget, the National Assembly has been scrutinizing the government's implementation of the 2025 budget. From your perspective, what are the biggest gaps between what was approved and what is being delivered? Because like you just outlined, we have, in your own words, a lot of unnecessary institutions that are operating and keeping government at its feet when it should be pausing, perhaps to, take a deep breath and look at what path to take if another.
Yeah. No, so the problem, you could have a situation where the government is simply misallocating resources, where they would say we will put 2 billion in foreign services and still end up putting 2 billion there. So that's one. It's just a simple misallocation of resources. You have another problem that we have here in the budget, which this happens every single year, which is the budget, when it presented to the National Assembly, is supposed to be a plan. This is what we are going to do in A, B, C sectors.
Yeah.
But in the Gambia, when you each and every single year, what the government say it will do or what it will spend always differs from what it actually ends up doing. So budget credibility is actually low. So there is that problem, obviously. You have all sort of problems, but these are the main problems. And the other problem again is the huge amount of resources that the government puts in recurrent expenditure as opposed to development or capital expenditures.
Yeah, because Parliament, has raised concerns about transparency in procurement and spending.
Yeah.
What structural reforms would you say make the budget execution more credible, if you like? Because we need to have them in place if they are not already there.
The issue is the sort of reforms that are needed. On that side, it's one of these things where it's been talked about ad nauseum, like has been talked about over and over. It's like it's not like anybody doesn't know what to do. Is that when you have when you have a leadership failure at the top, everyone can know what the solution is, but it's never actually implemented. Like, let's talk about agriculture. What to do in agriculture, you don't have to go and read about something new or cutting edge. It's been known. The question now is the government doing what it's supposed to do in agriculture? How
do we deal with that numbness, if you like, of not executing what should be done?
Yeah, so it's, it all comes up, you have, we could go on the whole morning about it, but basically better public finance management, having credible budget, making sure that when the government says they are going to spend X amount on Y sector, they do it. When they, you don't have the Ministry of Education calling the Ministry of Finance for like 9 months saying, where is the school improvement grant that has been put in the budget? When are we going to have it? It's like asking them for that small, which is by the way a very minuscule amount, but something that is really needed in education. It's like pulling teeth. So the point here is, we could go into arcane details about public finance management, but what the fundamental problem here is when you have a leadership failure, where institutions and the individuals that are leading them, such as the Minister of Finance, are not being held accountable for their failure to adhere to things that they are legally, obligated to do. Because making sure that the budget appears before Parliament at a specific time is a legal requirement. This Minister of Finance has failed that. Making sure that the budget that the National Assembly actually has approved is spent in a particular way. This is not at the discretion of the minister. This is a legal requirement. When that thing happens on a consistent basis, then what is the problem? We have a leadership failure. And you could have anything written down in as elegantly as you want, in as fine a detail as you want. It's not going to matter. The failure here is failure of leadership, and that leadership failure goes to the very top, and it really is Adama Barrow.
You you've talked about leadership failure, but what else would you say citizens should interpret in the recurring pattern of ambitious budgets and non-implementation of it, as you said earlier?
Oh, what
interpretation do we take away from it, aside from poor leadership of the numbness in implementation of the budget, and as well as being it ambitious altogether? We see this fancy budget come out there, great presentation of it, like you said,
right.
And then in actuality we don't actually see that in the implementation of it. Aside from poor leadership, like you just said, what else?
Well, I think that really is the crux of the matter. Mm-hmm. Everything else flows from there. So the conclusion, the inevitable conclusion is, as a citizen, what should you conclude is the next step that you need to do. The ultimate accountability that for the government is people having the power to change the leadership. So if you as a citizen, you see that things are not happening and you correctly surmise that it is ultimately a leadership failure, the logical conclusion there is that there needs to be a change in that leadership.